get started. Happy Tuesday. It's agency training again today. Today we have a really great panel. And before I introduce the speakers, I just want to say we're going to discuss a big topic in the agency space, which evolves around the differences between like agencies on their nature. I'll ask first when it comes to outbound, if you do have those experiences. How do you communicate SEO on a level of growth and not on a level of labor?
When I'm talking about growth with clients, I'll tell you right now, my favorite strategy, and this has been my favorite strategy for 10 years, is to show them competition that's doing it better than they are. If you want to get a customer excited about growth and excited about spending money on your services, then show them a competitor who's doing better than they are. Give them actual, here is why I think they're doing better than you. And here's how we've done it and helped somebody get better, and this is what we want to do for you. That's probably my favorite, and that works in an outbound situation, that works in an inbound, but I have been leaning on the competition, using the competition to sell my services for as long as I've been doing this.
I love it, man. I want to follow up on this with you specifically because to me, one of the biggest challenges in SEO is the fact that I'll not see results fast. And a lot of time as a client, like my biggest objection would be like, listen, is it the right time? Is it making sense for me? Okay, I think, can we start slower and scale as we see results? Why is the price, so how do you face that? What's your best tactics against it?
It's not uncommon to get those sort of objections from somebody when you're chatting about SEO, specifically because it is a longer term thing, right? So there are ways to mitigate it. One, make sure you're chatting with the right person. Okay, SEO is in my opinion a fairly bad single channel growth strategy, right? SEO is best paired with friends. It likes friends. It likes paid media as a friend. It likes email as a friend. It likes branding as a friend. Social media so SEO works really well when it has friends. And so if that can even be print, because if we see a piece of printed material and then what do we do if we're actually interested in the service? We still go online, we still Google, boom, SEO has now helped your print media, right? But SEO likes friends. So if I'm chatting with somebody and they're trying to put all of their eggs in this SEO basket for a payout that's going to happen in 6 months to a year, then that's a disqualifying event, right? That's an educational event. And that's something where we're probably going to step back a little bit. If those objections can pop up really quick early on, and they can tell you very fast that you're not talking to the right person. Okay. So just ask a few more questions and try to figure out if they're the right person or not. If they are the right person and they're still concerned, look, there's a good chance they've had a bad experience. Okay. There's a good chance that they've tried lots of stuff. There's a good chance that deep down they see their competitors doing SEO and everybody else is winning and they just aren't. They're super frustrated with it. And that's why maybe somebody wants to start a little more conservatively. And that actually sounds like an ideal customer. So those objections aren't necessarily bad.
Amazing response, John. Really appreciate it. And you made a really good point there, actually, in the very beginning. You said SEO has friends, right? And so obviously, when you look at friend groups, some friends are being prioritized over others. So when you're talking about SEO, what are some of the angles that when looking at a prospect or looking at a client that you would want to prioritize over other angles that they're going after?
I try to find the angle that tells the story that now is a good time for them to invest in SEO because they'll make more money with it. So typically, if their paid strategy is working well, if like a Google specifically, a Google paid strategy that's working well, then SEO is almost a slam dunk, right? Because you're just going to get those clicks from the same place. They're just not going to cost you per click, right? And so that friend works really well. That friend works exceptionally well with SEO. Even Facebook advertising or Instagram advertising to some degree, if they're doing paid ads, then that typically means that SEO is going to work.
This is great. And again, I love the way you deal with objections by giving the value and the competitor and highlighting your ideal customers on the way. And following up on this, Laura, because I think you're also on the other side of the non-traditional performance channels, right? So it's not a performance, you're doing content. How do you communicate the value in content where you're communicating with prospects?
Qualifying is like super important when it comes to these things, because the more you qualify, the less objections you will have. And so when I make sure that they're already posting on social media, so I'm not going to someone who never posts on social media and trying to convince them that the future is social media. No, I'm not doing that. My target audience are people who are already on social media, where I can go in, tweak a few things, do it for them, and get results, because they value social media. So that's always the biggest objection that I have to overcome, is people are like, what's the point? I do this, I have referrals, my network. I'm not dealing with those people. But that's like the biggest objection that I usually have with people.
So when you're talking about qualifying people, if they're posting to social or not, do you ever take into account the actual quality that they are posting to social? Because I see a lot of brands that are posting to social, but the quality of their content is not very good. Do you take that into an account as well?
If I see that I can help them, and usually that's when their content is not as good. So if a brand is killing it, hey, I'll do it for you, of course. But I usually lean towards the people who I can go in, show them what they're doing wrong. I'll completely give you an audit, and give you the tools to do it. And usually when people get the tools, they're like, oh, I don't want to do this. And then they're like, hey, can you do it for me? So I'll give away all the tools, show them that I know what I'm talking about, but I want to make sure that their content isn't like super perfect, because then I can't help them. I want to target people who I can help.
What type of value are you communicating with them outside of, okay, I see that you're posting on social, I see that you're investing in content, and I think this is also to you, Jacob. Like, I see you're investing in content, I see that you have something going, but how do you communicate the value outside of vanity metric? I will get you more engagement, I'll get you more reach. What kind of value prop you have there?
So that's when you have to start talking about their goals, because sometimes, like, I have one client that just wants awareness, just as much reach as possible. I have another client who wants to be thought leadership, just wants to be known as the expert in the industry. And then I have other clients that want leads. So it's identifying what they want and then focusing on that metric. Sometimes that is awareness, sometimes that's leads. And then adjusting the content around that.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, Laura. When I was running a video marketing agency, the biggest question, the biggest ask that we'd get out of people is, what are you looking to achieve? And every brand, every company has a story. And if you can tie in some sort of emotion to the content that they're publishing, you're going to be able to figure out which direction they're trying to go in and where you're going to be able to provide the most amount of value. And if you can tie whatever you're pitching to them to an emotional pain point, their biggest thing on the content is that they wanted to tell the story about how they built this up through generations, and the recipes were passed down, and the grandparents were a part of this, and there was this whole legacy behind it.
But I do something very different with performance marketing, and what I offer and the way I focus on growth instead of labor is I sell the result. We build $1 million marketing engines, guaranteed. That's the headline of my website. That's what I tell people we do. And by both focusing on the outcome, you have a marketing engine, which if you fuel it will run and make you money, and by offering a guarantee, right? It overcomes many objections. And the other thing I do that I don't think I've ever encountered an agency that does think that this scope does is I don't bill monthly. There's no retainer. There's a project fee. That means they go into this knowing exactly how much it costs, agreeing this is the result they wish to reach. And we set KPIs for what this guarantee is promising them they will achieve. And then away we go. Right? You don't come to a go-to-market expert if you're making 10 million a year. You come to a go-to-market expert if you're making 0 to maybe 50K a month. And then your problem is, how do I make this become more repeatable? And so using that as a growth-centered way to talk about what I do for a client.
Yeah. So
Hold on. Okay, sorry. Before
sorry.
we dive into that, I want to say just 2 quick things about what we've discussed. One, I think this gives a lot of, as a brand new agency owner, if because I hope that some of you listening to this are in that boat, and it's probably all nice to hear that eventually you can get to a point where you can turn down clients, because eventually you can. But there's 2 things I want to encourage you to do. One, build out some sort of outbound partner lead acquisition process, because one of the nice things about an outbound process is that you are identifying and targeting your ideal customers, and they will have a lot less red flags if you're doing it right, versus the people that are coming to you saying, I need help desperately because something is horribly wrong. An outbound system allows you to target people that are doing well, that you just feel a high degree of confidence that you can help them to do better. Okay. But I think, especially in the early days of our agencies, I'm guessing that all of you have been in a situation where maybe a potential prospect or client did display a few red flags, but you're brand new. And so I won't tell you that I didn't take on some of those clients. And I also won't say that I regret it. I just want you guys to remember that this is the audience, not the speakers, that it's okay to take on a client that maybe doesn't perfectly fit into your wheelhouse when you're new. Okay. Because those clients are going to push you. You're going to learn a lot. You will learn what you want to work with, what you want to tolerate, and what you don't really quickly. And again, I just encourage you to move to some sort of outbound or partner central like lead model so that you can, as quickly as possible, move away from the ones that you don't want to work with, because they can be very draining, right? And there is such a thing as bad revenue. And while it's hard to say no, I can also think of a few times where I did end up making that decision and saying no. And I'm pretty sure it worked out really well for me. So I know it's tough, though, especially when you're looking at the first couple of months, but stick with your gut, chat with other people, reach out to some of the other agency folks who've been around the block. I'm sure that all of us are willing to help.
I do also think different types of business owners want different types of engagement. I have two guys who we only communicate through, one's through WhatsApp and one's through Slack. That's all. We don't do calls. And I have 4 or 5 other clients with a weekly call. We talk every week. In either case, right, accepting that you have different types of clients you have to work with, I do think there is either you price it into your model by default, or you just say, for this type of client, maybe I will bill more. Being able to say, hey, whether it's a weekly call or just a weekly report that goes your way, I'm flexible, I think can really help you with acquiring both types of person.
I think it's interesting, though, that you were talking about talking to the clients on all different platforms, because I made it a point to not get my clients' WhatsApp numbers and stuff. I'm like, no, we're going to do it by email, because then it's crazy. Then they're messaging you like everywhere. So I find it interesting that you have a few channels.
I tried to do all on Slack, but some people don't use Slack. And I refuse to use Teams because it's cancer. So
because it's Teams. It's the worst.
Because Teams.
But as a salesperson, there's a piece of me that just, Jacob, you'll appreciate this. You probably all will. But I think, man, one of the saddest moments in a sales rep's life is when you present the price and you've built up that anxiety inside and you're sharing it. And their response back is, oh, I thought it'd be way more. This is great. How do we get started? It's like, damn it. It's like, this was the weekly price. Weekly. Oh, was that say monthly? No, just kidding. I'd never do that to a client, but I think we've all been there, and that's great. We celebrate. That's a close, but missed opportunities. Maybe 1 or 2 more discovery questions before might have helped to alleviate.
Another thing to keep people in the loop if you want to work on particularly async comms, like I share a task dashboard with every client. I use Notion. I know a couple of agency coaches who think I'm an insane person that I use Notion for task management and all work delivery, but I like it. Anyhow, every client gets access to their dashboard, everything that we're working on for them right now. And they can anytime go look and see the state of every task we're working on and who it's assigned to. And so they can talk to us in Slack. If they see something is marked as done, of course, we'll ping them in Slack.
And it's so important to adopt a system like a CRM where you can keep track of all this communication. And I'm gonna double down on John's point about when you're scaling and when you're growing, there's going to be a point where your recurring revenue is going to outweigh what you're bringing in almost always. And it usually flips at some point in time in your company, whether your recurring revenue is going to flip and be less or more or whatever it is. And when I was working with a company where we were doing hundreds of millions of dollars a year in annual recurring revenue, there was a time where it flipped. And when it flipped, when new business actually started coming in less and recurring revenue was actually outweighing everything, there was something that was interesting. Retention numbers were dropping. And the one thing that I noticed on every single account that we looked at where we lost was poor communication.
And bottom line, every agency have that 1 to 3 clients that are keeping the lights on. I will say, though, that it's like with kids, they want attention. It's really simple. And I've seen so many times that results are less important than how much they think you care. How much they think you're on top of your stuff. Because they can live with 2 poor months. I've seen all my clients have been through poor 1 or 2 or 3 months. But once they know, oh, he's on top of it, I trust him, he knows what's going on, he's okay, because they're doing a lot of actions as well. Every business owner, they have their own team, they have their own processes, their own stuff. So it's about attribution.
My pricing is, John mentioned earlier how upset he is when a client goes, oh, I thought it would be more. My pricing is I've had in my client roster both the second largest bank in Asia and a bunch of 2-person startups, and the price is the same. To me, the work I do is worth the value. I charge that much. And when I tell people, look, there's 7 of us in our team, right? You're getting a 7-person team parachuting in to launch your product. That does, like, you can hire for the duration of the guarantee I'm running. You can maybe hire 1 intern, 2 interns.
I'm going to bring up a point where many times you pitch something to someone and they thought it was going to be more, and you can now automatically assume that they probably have allocated more of a budget towards something. This is called customer share of wallet. This is where you can upsell them on additional services that you may offer, or you can get referrals going to another agency, maybe something that you don't fulfill. There's still money to be made. There's still money that you can tap into. If you can build that trust with them and over deliver on the project that you've given to them, you can still make money with them. You can still tap into that extra budget. It doesn't mean that you can just never have the conversation again. I always encourage upsells and in trying to get more hands in the pot, because you'll make more money off of it.
That's an excellent point.
Great point.
You can always upsell and cross-sell. And you can also say, hey, and I forgot the appendix. That's another side of it. But again, the moment someone thinks of your services more than you quote it, it's a good position to be in. When you force someone into your pricing point, you always have to over-deliver. And that puts a lot of stress. I've been in that spot. Like, to me, the reason to go performances, there's no argument about the pricing, because the client has a clear understanding of the value he's getting, and it's worth it for me, so I don't care. And please, we have 4 minutes left, so I'd appreciate every closing remarks you have, guys.
Just work with good people, because in the end, that's what's going to get you to grow.
I'll go off of mine. Pricing is always an objection when the value is not behind the number that you're giving them. And so when you can provide more value than the number that you're presenting to them, it'll never be a concern. So focus on value as opposed to negotiating off of a number.
I don't know if a good way to grow a business, to scale it, other than focus on growth instead of labor. If you're selling hours, you are in a bad spot. Find the right way to sell your value instead of your hours, and you'll be able to decouple your work from your hours. If I were to make an hourly rate for me, it would come to something like $500 an hour. No client will pay that, but they will pay for the result of the work I do. And that's what's important to them. So you need to figure out the same thing for you, whomever may be listening.
Some great closing thoughts. I just have fun. That ties in with charge the right amount, because then you'll enjoy working. Find people you like working with, because then you'll enjoy working. It's not always fun, don't be wrong. And there are emails that will break your heart. There are phone calls that you don't want to be a part of. But be willing to do the hard things today so that you can enjoy tomorrow a little bit more. And make sure it is, if you're hating it, you got to change something and reach out. Look, this is a great community. This is a great group. There's a lot of wonderful expertise here. No one's alone in this. How do I have an agency world? There's plenty of people here to help you. Just ask questions, have a little fun. I think that's the way to do it.
I want to say thanks for everybody coming over. Laura, Trevor, Jacob, John, appreciate your time. I appreciate your input. It was really fun for me. Next week, there's going to be the members roundtable with Frostlin. And in 2 weeks, we're going to get back to agency training on Tuesday, 2 p.m. I'm looking forward to see you, and have a great rest of your day.